Well, welcome. My name is Rick Kern from the BLC, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you this morning to what I think is going to be a really memorable and historical conference on history and memory in foreign language teaching. This conference, the brainchild of Claire Kramsch, and co-sponsored by the BLC and the Townsend Center for the Humanities, is really in the fine interdisciplinary tradition of Berkeley, bringing together different disciplines. And what's interesting is the way the schedule is organized. It focuses on social sciences in the morning, humanities in the afternoon, and not only social sciences broadly, but different disciplines within social sciences, history, psychology, anthropology, and then, of course, in the humanities, many languages represented, German, Japanese, Chinese, Persian, and all of this is going to, I think, help us develop the wherewithal to take multiple perspectives in our teaching, whether it's in languages or perhaps when we approach topics in the social sciences. So I just wanted to go over a few logistics. We do have a program change. James Wirch was not able to make it to California due to a tragedy back home, but he will be presenting in the afternoon. He was not able to present in the morning by Skype, but he will be coming, joining us virtually in the afternoon by Skype in the 2 o'clock slot. So Ryuko Kubota will be giving her talk in his 9:30 to 10:25 slot. So that is a major change to the program. We will be having a coffee break, and thanks to Billy Heidenfeld, some edible treats as well. Outside this door at 10:25 to 10:40. You'll see the restroom sign. Just go through here, and then there are men's and women's restrooms just around the corner as you go out into the hallway. We'll be breaking from 12:30 to 2 for lunch. There are lots of places right around here. There's the Free Speech Cafe right over at Moffett Library, and then, of course, over on Bancroft, Telegraph. There's lots of places to grab a bite to eat and share ideas with colleagues. So I'm sure this is going to be a memorable event, not only in terms of our own personal reflection, but in terms of socially shared memories that will strengthen the friendships that this kind of event fosters. And so I'm very much looking forward to it. And now I'm going to let Claire talk to us, introduce her brainchild, and fill us in on the background to this. Claire?
First, I'd like to thank the people who've made this colloquium possible. And in particular, Tony Cascardi, the former head of the Townsend Center for the Humanities here at Berkeley, who was so enthusiastic about our proposal that he immediately decided to fund it and asked why we were only holding a one-day colloquium. And we said that we wanted to first see whether it was possible to talk about these things, and then in the year or 2 years from now, we will run a larger conference if this one is successful. So thanks to Tony Cascardi, thanks to Janet Brockton, who's the former dean of the Humanities and Social Science here at Berkeley, and who has always been a strong supporter of the Berkeley Language Center. Thanks also, of course, to the International and Area Studies that regularly funds the Berkeley Language Center from Title VI monies. They have a direct stake in the quality of language instruction on campus, and they've always been very generous with that. And, of course, then thank you to our distinguished speakers from out of town and from in town, or from again in town. I'm looking at Bill Hanks. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this hopefully interesting discussion. And of course, thanks to Rick Kern and Mark Kaiser, who for acting upon this outlandish idea of mine last year, and for showing the enthusiasm and brainstorming the schedule and the program with me. So for the 15 minutes before we actually start the program, I'd like to share with you a little bit some ideas of why we came to think of a colloquium on this topic, why it is timely in many respects, and what we hope to discuss during this multidisciplinary colloquium. But first I'll start with something that must be on your mind. Is there a link between this colloquium and the date at which we chose to hold it, namely the 10th of September? Even though this colloquium was not meant to discuss the 10th anniversary of 9/11, it is fitting that we discuss the role that history and memory should play in foreign language classes on the eve of this anniversary. The attack on the icon of capitalism in the heart of New York City suddenly made it critically clear that Americans did not understand how they were seen in the rest of the world, nor how their worldview differed from that of many other people around the globe. America's glaring lack of foreign language capabilities was immediately singled out by the US government as one of the root causes of the attack on the World Trade Center. In March 2003, the federal government funded, at the tune of $56 million, a university-affiliated research center for the advanced study of language at the University of Maryland, charged with helping to improve U.S. intelligence capabilities, defend national security, and serve U.S. political and economic interests abroad. The main mission of this center was and is to improve knowledge of less commonly taught languages, enhance the acquisition and maintenance of foreign language capability by government professionals, especially at the advanced levels, advance the U.S. capacity to use foreign language skills in a wide variety of professions and situations, improve the quality of human language technology. It also served as a catalyst for nationwide efforts to tailor foreign language education in schools to the needs of national foreign policy. In direct response and in contradistinction to the government's exhortation to increase the foreign language capabilities of the US for instrumental purposes, the Modern Language Association, in its ad hoc Committee on Foreign Languages, issued a 2007 widely publicized report on foreign language education at the college level. The goal of the foreign language major, it said, was not only to teach functional and communicative abilities, but to develop the students' language awareness and historical and political consciousness. Ever since 2007, American foreign language teachers have discussed ways of teaching historical and political consciousness in their language classes. But many methodological challenges have stood in the way. Let me mention a few of those methodological challenges. After World War II, the teaching of foreign languages in the US moved from a philological, grammar translation pedagogy and a pedagogy of drills and artificial dialogues to a pedagogy focused on authentic communication between native and non-native speakers around common everyday tasks. Communicative language teaching assumes that the two interlocutors have the same interest in keeping the conversation going through the expression, interpretation, and negotiation of intended meanings because they share deep down the same pragmatic, in part business-oriented goals. The ideal of a communicative competence defined by information exchange and negotiation of meaning was and still is the unquestioned goal of foreign language education from the 70s through the year 2000. 9/11, 2001 made visible Americans' lack of understanding of foreign cultures and worldviews. And the MLA report quotes, "The US's inability to communicate, despite 30 years of communicative language teaching, its inability to communicate with or comprehend other parts of the world became a prominent subject for journalists as language failures of all kinds plagued the United States military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq and its efforts to suppress terrorism." End of quote. But 9/11 only exacerbated a trend that had been slowly growing since the 80s, namely the instrumentalization of foreign languages and of their study at the college level. Since the 80s, undergraduates have been expected to learn usable skills, that is, skills to get things done, like business contracts and marketing strategies, not skills to read Voltaire in the original or to appreciate Russian poetry, Now, the Defense Department expected them to learn something about foreign cultures, but in order to better interpret foreign emails, interrogate foreign suspects, and psych out foreign allies. The desirable experts are today for the Pentagon not so much linguists, like in World War II, but cultural anthropologists, who are sent to Afghanistan and Iraq to teach the troops about local mentalities and worldviews. With the MLA report came the realization that different worldviews were associated with different interpretations of historical events, different memories, and different aspirations. But how to teach those worldviews in a language class? Here are some of the challenges. 1. Many literary and cultural studies scholars in foreign language departments sincerely believe that it is the task of language teachers, especially in the first 2 years of language instruction, to teach just grammar and vocabulary. Raising historical and political consciousness is the role of literary and cultural scholars, not language teachers. 2. Some language teachers do not find it appropriate to discuss history, especially difficult historical events, in foreign language classrooms. The students don't have the sufficient proficiency to give nuanced opinions. Students' American patriotic sentiment leads the students to be on the defensive. Students are convinced that they are on the right side of history. And so why discuss other views of history? Some students are reluctant to discuss potentially divisive topics in class. Others reject anything cultural in a language class that is supposed to just teach language, not culture, literature, or history. And there are the fear of some teachers of offending or embarrassing their American students by seeming to put into question their view of history, whether it be the bombing of Dresden or Hiroshima, the viewpoints of communists like Bertolt Brecht, or the claims of Israeli and Palestinian Arabs. As in other classes, today's students know little about history, and it is difficult to make them understand cultures that are distant from them, not only in space, but also in time. The foreign language teacher has the additional handicap. In a history class, students expect to be taught other perspectives or multiple perspectives on history and to regurgitate them on exams. But in foreign language classes, they don't expect to learn anything but foreign labels for the familiar furniture of their universe. In some of the texts they encounter, the foreign language sometimes puts into question their very sense of who they are and what they believe in. See, for example, the student who, after in her French class reading Camus' The Stranger, found herself being against the death penalty, whereas outside of class she was in favor of the death penalty. But in French it was called la peine de mort, and all of a sudden she was against it because it evoked other things. Even if there remains a well-defined division of labor in foreign language departments between the lower division language program, which is expected to teach undergraduates basic communicative competence and basic literature skills, and the upper division literary and cultural studies program that is expected to give students cultural knowledge, literary appreciation, and advanced literacy skills, the textbooks that are used in beginning language classes are by no means ideologically neutral. In order to facilitate students' learning, they very often, through the foreign words, offer a worldview and historical perspective that is familiar to Americans' view of history. They don't present foreign language texts or linguistic exercises that would put that view into question. If historical and political consciousness is a desirable goal of foreign language instruction at the college level, to what extent, at what level, and in which way can it be raised in the foreign language programs? This is exactly what this colloquium is meant to explore. The idea of this colloquium came from a class that I observed in Germany that was teaching American students an intensive language course to prepare them to go and study at German universities. These were senior undergraduates from Ivy League schools on the East Coast. And the text that I observed the teacher teaching was, in fact, the bombing of Dresden. But the text that was in that textbook was a text by Erich Kästner that told children about the bombing of Dresden and what a catastrophe that was, and it did not mention who done it, nor why. And the students were very upset. They said, why doesn't the text say who did it, and especially why were the Germans bombed to smithereens? And the teacher returned the question and said, well, why do you think that the text did not say who did it? And the teacher afterwards told me the text did not say because it did not want to point fingers, as the Nazis had done, to the Allies. But the students in the class suggested various reasons. One, because the Germans felt guilty, or because the German language prefers passive voice, whereas English prefers the active voice. So Germans don't like to take responsibility, whereas Americans, and particularly English speakers, love to take responsibility. So, and the teacher said, but the text doesn't contain a single passive. And then after class, I talked with the students, and in fact, the students said that, and I'm just looking for my notes here, the language classroom is now really the place to learn about values, history, and culture, the students said. One other chimed in, cultural articles are used to pique our interest, but we don't have the vocabulary to talk about political topics. And then a third one said, yeah, some German instructors want to raise our consciousness about us being Americans. It's debilitating. So what should we do? I want to link up in the next 3 or 4 minutes to a view that this colloquium definitely is a follow-up on, and that is a conversation that we had on this topic while Dan was still an active member, Dan Slogan was still an active member of our faculty, namely the concept of language ecology. Because of course, as we're going to be talking about the relationship of language teaching and historical consciousness, we've got to think of language in terms that are somewhat broader than just a bunch of nouns and adjectives, grammar and vocabulary, that language teachers are perceived to be teaching by those who are not language teachers. In spring 2004, many of us here at UC Berkeley were privileged to co-teach a course coordinated by Professor Dan Slogan on language ecology, as part of an emerging interdisciplinary effort to explore language within its individual, societal, cultural, and historical frameworks. It was designed and co-taught by a group of faculty members from several departments and disciplines in the social sciences and in the humanities. And you can find the syllabus of that course on the BLC website. And in the course description, we describe our endeavor as follows, quote, we approach language learning and language use as a non-linear, relational human activity co-constructed between humans and their environment, contingent upon their position in space and history, and a site of struggle for the control of social power and cultural memory. That was already a program on which this colloquium is, in fact, following up on. Some of the people teaching that course were, in fact, Bill Hanks, Patricia from anthropology, Patricia Baquedano-Lopez from education, and Yves Sweetser and many others from linguistics. So it was already, if you wish, setting the stage for the colloquium that we have here. It was this idea of language ecology and of language use and language learning that led Mark, Rick, and myself to choose the speakers that are going to speak at this colloquium. You will see, and I will try to tie up some of the things learned in this colloquium at the end of the colloquium, but already I want to attune you to the fact that although these speakers come from different disciplines, there are things that they have in common. and that will make it easier for us to listen to them with a view of foreign language education in the back of our minds. All these speakers are fascinated and interested in the distinction between insider, outsider, newcomers and natives, foreign and native speakers, and the mediators that serve to bridge these different worldviews, different cosmologies, different beliefs. Whether it's in anthropology, and Bill Hanks will be talking about the colonizers and the Mayas, the colonized Mayas. You will have Professor Sleskin talking about Jews and Russians in the Soviet Union. You will have Ryuko, who's very interested, for instance, in Japanese leaving Japan, going to Brazil, coming back to Japan, and having to mediate the Brazilianness and the nativeness of the Japanese, Japanese. So you have among these speakers an interest in go-betweens, in mediators as like missionaries, shamans, what Professor Sleskin calls mercurial people, that are under the sign of Hermes and Mercury, sort of transition people, such as language teachers, translators, and interpreters. And you will find in what they say things that will resonate with you as language teachers, as you are not just teaching the parts of speech, but you are teaching, in fact, how to bridge different historical worldviews, different cultural ways of understanding the world that is absolutely linked to the categories that you are teaching the students to use instead of their usual categories, 9/11 being the first one. And I will stop here. Somebody from the Contra Costa Times asked me, in fact, whether 9/11 made any difference in the way I taught. I said, well, number one, we don't call it 9/11 in French because we have the day before the month. So if anything, it would be 11/9, and that would not mean anything for a French. And we call it le 11 septembre. But even le 11 septembre does not capture what now, for an American, 9/11 has come to mean. So that's what we want to be talking about, and I'll stop here. Okay, so now I'm going to...